Welcome to the Business of Story. I'm Park Howell, and I'm here to help you excel through the stories you tell. But being a compelling business storyteller is hard for some because it takes focused, deliberate practice. That's why I consult, teach, coach, and speak internationally, helping leaders just like you become confident and persuasive communicators, to help you connect with audiences like you never have before, and to excite them to action. I would be delighted to bring you and your team one of my in-person or virtual storytelling mastery classes or mastery course. Or you can even take advantage of my ABTs of Selling online training right now. Either way, please let me know when I can bring the business of story to your world. And until then, enjoy today's show. I'm so glad you're here. Look, we all face a ton of turmoil and tragedy in our lives, and these events can be brutal to overcome. But if you flip the story, if you can embrace your demons of doubt, your situational Sith Lords, and reframe tumult into triumph, then you're well on your way to moving from victim to victor. And few people know this journey better than our esteemed guest today on the Business of Story.
And what I learned, you can only do so much with a brain injury. It takes time, it takes months and years and hours to heal. It's repetition, it's motions as a child. When you come out of the womb, we learn to speak, we learn to put our fingers to our mouth, we learn to take off our steps, we learn to fall. All that had gone away from me. So at the age of 39, I had the body of a 3-year-old kid and a brain of a 4-year-old.
Shawn Entin was a successful, eclectic entrepreneur in Southern California, working as a leader in financing sustainable residential housing following the global recession of 2008, to becoming one of the first business managers to represent mixed martial arts stars like Dan Henderson as the fledgling MMA industry grew. Shawn combined his love for business and MMA to help Navy SEALs transition into a more normal life in the States. Then, suddenly, in November of 2011, at just 39 years old, it all came crashing down around Shawn. During a jiu-jitsu training session with one of his Navy SEAL clients, Shawn was caught in a chokehold that severed his carotid artery. He was induced into a coma for 10 days and survived several surgeries. The story doctors told Shawn is that he would never speak, walk, or live a normal, independent life again. But as you'll hear, Shawn was determined to live into a more powerful story, turning his tragedy into triumph. It has been 10 years since he had a stroke, and he has not only regained his independence, he's also become the stroke hacker, learning how the brain works and what it takes to make it better. His mantra, which he will share in this episode, helped him through the most difficult times in his life, reframing his story. His experience also taught him much about the brain and its neuroplasticity, and most importantly, how the stories we tell ourselves and the mantras we tell ourselves can help us overcome the most debilitating physical setbacks. So he's taken all of that knowledge and he's made strokehacker.com, a community that helps stroke survivors recover from their brain injuries and to regain their independence again. So please welcome to the Business of Story with his own remarkable tale, Shawn Entin. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Hello, Park. Thank you for having me on. This is fantastic.
Oh man, it's amazing. You think about it. A few short months ago, we did not know who each other were, but I met you through our son, Parker Howell, who met you on Metal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Who then called me and said, "Dad, you have to hear this guy's story. It is just unbelievable." And so we got a chance to meet a while ago on a phone call and a Zoom session. And I'm just so glad you are here to share your story with our listeners today.
Of course. I'm excited. I can't tell you enough about who Parker is to me and the fact when he came into my life and how much he's helped me in just such a short time. I'm just honored to be here and honored to be his friend and yours as well. So thank you, Park.
Oh, well, you're welcome. So let's jump into a little bit of your backstory. And first, how you and Parker came to know each other through metal. And what is metal?
Metal is a men's group of really kind-hearted, heart-centered individuals who are mostly entrepreneurs who really want to give back and make a difference in this world and give back to community. It's not about what you have in your pocket. It's about what you can do to give back and what can you do to create the laughter and the fun amongst other men like us. And everyone in metal has got a superhero trait. And I actually call it my gang, but it's my extended family of where I can come at any point in my time, in my day or my life. I can call any one of my metal brothers, and I know they're going to show up for me, and they're going to take a stand for whatever I'm going through or whatever I need. And it's just a blast of love and excitement with these guys. And I had met Parker in the breakout room in metal, because there's a guest speaker and there's keynotes all the time. And Park and I happened to have matched up randomly in a breakout room. And I found out that he was big into jujitsu and he loved the UFC. So he hit me up. He actually connected with me after the breakout room. So I'm going to have an event at my house. And I kind of explained to him that I have a really prolific background with the UFC and the MMA world because I was actually way back in the day, back when the UFC was getting started, I was probably the first one to manage fighters in the MMA sport. Not boxers, but these guys are all around best athletes in the world. So I had managed a few athletes. This is right when the UFC was getting bought and sold. And I was there in the middle of just all of it, going from Vegas, getting sanctioned in Vegas to New Jersey, and then jumping on a plane to Abu Dhabi and then to Japan for Pride. So I was always around these athletes. And when I realized there was such a business opportunity, what was going on overseas, that I knew when this came back into the States, if there's 90,000 people attending one fight, show in Japan, in the Tokyo Dome, what's going to happen if this ever comes to America? And I was spot on. I knew the sport would just take over and, be one of the largest gatherings and money makers, I think, in the world. And that's what it's actually have done. So meeting your son, I had lunch with Parker, and then I invited him over to my house to train with my therapist, my trainer, because your son, as you know, is big into the VR space. And I didn't even know what the VR space was, Park. I was like, the virtual reality. I was like, what is that? You're going to put goggles on my head and we're going to do what with it? And he started explaining it to me. And I put these goggles on my head because I'm overly stimulated as is from my brain injury, and I got sensory issues from light and sound. And I said to him, I'll try this. And when I put on, the cosmic looking glass, which Parker designed and created himself by hand, and he walked me through this meditation, this breath work of what he built, that after doing it a couple of times, I got acclimated with it. But more than that, I actually felt it working on my soul and my body, where I'd go out and reach out for breath work or meditation apps, or join groups, with my metal guys. But when I experienced Parker's, I had called my friend Sam Morris, who's in metal, who's like the gatekeeper to metal, one of the most prolific, outstanding coaches, I think, in the world, life coach. I said, Sam, you got to look at this technology. This is going to be a game changer. Sam came over to my house. And he put the goggles on, I think, at my house. And we went right over to your son's house, all within a couple of hours. And Sam looked at this thing and said, we got to get behind him. And so Sam was on board. I was on board. And then that's how it kind of just evolved.
Shawn, let's unpack this stuff. I love your energy. No, and I love your passion around all this. So metal, what does metal stand for?
So it's media, technology, artists, and leaders.
Yeah, so media, entertainment, technology, arts, and leaders. And you guys met through this. My other good friend, Kenny Aronoff, he is a big-time metal guy. He was the first one that mentioned metal to me, and then Parker joined it, and you guys all together. But before your stroke, take us a little bit to the kind of person and the kind of entrepreneur and the hard-charging person you were, and then the day that it all came crashing down around you.
I'm from Los Angeles. Good friend of mine, my partner, one of my closest friends, says to me he wants to get involved with solar and wind power and sustainable energy, renewable energies. And I looked at Chris at the time. This is probably back in 2006 and 2007. We just finished up some businesses up in LA. and I was looking to move out of the city. I was done with Los Angeles, and he says there's a group of guys starting up in San Diego. I think you should check out their group. They're called Greenhouse Energy, and I think we can get behind them and really make a play at this, being in that world. And what we did was we went into people's homes, residential homes, and just re-outfitted their home with gray water, the windows, sustainable energies, solar, everything to make sense of, I would say, getting off the grid, but learning, how to reuse waters, how to reuse sustainable living. And I went down to San Diego and I started, and I helped these guys start a company. And there's like 4 of us in a backyard, and I was there at the right place at the right time. And I started explaining to them, hey, if you're going to do this, we need a business plan, and we really need to go raise money on Wall Street and really put together a real business here. And they started something, but it was only home-based residential. I said, I think what we should do is probably get into the commercial side of things, or even like the military side, because these guys are all ex-military. And sure enough, the company grew from like 4 to I think like 50 or 75. And along the way in San Diego, I moved my family down there. I had one daughter at the time who was like 4 years old. We lived on the beach, and I had become friends with a lot of the military in San Diego. Happened to be the SEALs down there, the odd teams on the West Coast. And then I started to hang out with the SEALs and realizing, Park, that they were the war on combat, the war on terror was just happening. And these young kids who were in their 20s or 30s were just coming back from the war, and they didn't know how to reintegrate back into society. These guys were trained mercenaries, and they were hell athletes. I mean, just amazing men. They didn't know how to start a company. They didn't even know how to become civilians again. So I was, in a sense, I would say coaching them by teaching them how simple cash flow statements work, P&Ls work, business plans work. And they were showing me what they knew. And I love these guys. I love these men and women for what they did for the country, and then how they defended us and my kids and what they did and what they stood for. But what I realized, Park, along the way, is that when they came back home, there were no organizations or no outfits to help them reintegrate back into society. And what I also realized is that a Navy SEAL, the U.S. government will spend $8 million on each Navy SEAL, and that means from boots to combat. But there's not a lot of money to help them with their PTS or their PTSD when they come back home. So these guys are all set and ready to go to war, but when they come back, they don't have a basis, they don't have a foundation, and they don't have a brotherhood like they used to have. So these guys wanted to learn about mixed martial arts and MMA and close quarters fighting. And the Navy didn't want them getting within 3 feet of their opponent because they spent so much money on these guys to train them. They wanted to use them as snipers or as medical triage, or collect intel and bring it back to the Pentagon. So they found out that I still had my contacts with mixed martial arts. And one of my good friends in San Diego is Dan Henderson. And Dan at the time was still fighting, and he was making his way for another belt or two because he wasn't going to quit. And I took these guys in to train with Dan. And just I'm not a military guy. I'm just a civilian. I'm no expert in mixed martial arts at all. I was a beginner, but I knew them. I knew enough to actually bring them into this new world and get them acclimated. And when I found out when they were training together, they were able to just be themselves. And one day I was training with them, Park, and I got caught in a choke myself. That choke led to a massive stroke.
How old were you when this happened?
I was 39. I was just in the middle of taking 2 companies with my team public, from private to public. There were small companies. One was the Greenhouse Sustainable Energy World, and the other was actually a tequila company, which is kind of funny. Yeah, and then I was partners with Shaquille O'Neal at the time, and Shaquille and Shaq wanted to call it Shaquilla. So we actually launched our own line of tequila called Shaquilla, and everything was going well. I was on top of the world. I had 2 companies. I had plenty of money. I lived on the beach. I was hanging out with the military. I was traveling the world, raising money or doing whatever I wanted to be doing. And at the time, we just had another baby who I think was 18 months, with Shiloh, which is my youngest. So Lily Park, I had 1 kid on my shoulders, 1 kid on my chest, and we were either off to the zoo, off to the beach, off to SeaWorld. And it was just, I was that go-ahead all-around dad that wanted hands-on. And then all of a sudden, one day in jiu-jitsu, simple routine exercise, I got caught in a blood choke where my carotid artery got dissected. And I didn't know at the time what the damage it had done. I went home and I kept feeling like this aching feeling in the back of my throat. I thought it was just like a virus, or like I just had swollen glands or something. But what had happened was my carotid artery was dissecting and sending clots up to my brain. Because I was such good shape, and I was feeding myself the right foods and being, top condition, I had beat this off for so long. But after 6 weeks of fighting this thing and not knowing what was actually happening, it caused a stroke. And usually, park with a stroke, you have 4 hours to get what's called a declotting agent, or just a clot buster, which breaks up the clots in your body and prevents, the real horrific disability which people suffer from a stroke. I didn't have that time to get a shot. I was 6 weeks post, but you usually have about 4 hours. So I was in San Luis Obispo at the time for Thanksgiving. I'd driven my family from San Diego up to San Luis Obispo, which is probably about a good 4 to 5 hours. My ex-wife's in the car, the dog's in the car, and my 2 kids are in the back seat. We're going to San Luis Obispo, and it's Thanksgiving weekend. We had some wine, and the day before Black Friday of 2011, I woke up in the middle of the night and the room was spinning. And like anything else, Park, I said to myself, maybe I just had too much wine. I don't feel good. And I went back to sleep. And the next day I woke up, I went to look in the mirror, and I went to put my right hand out, and I could not see my right hand, could not focus with my vision. And I looked in the mirror, and my face was ash gray, and my left side couldn't move. I couldn't move my left arm, and I had a major face droop. And the first signs of stroke, they stand for FAST. It means face, arm, speech, and timing. So the timing was gone, but I was suffering signs of a stroke, and I didn't even know what a stroke was. I told Stephanie, I said, Stephanie, call my dad. I think I'm dying. And as she called my dad, I'm back in the bathroom because she hadn't left my side. And I look in the mirror, and all of a sudden, Park, I literally see my soul leaving my body. Literally, I was having this outer body experience that I knew I was dying.
Wow. And then what happened?
And then he said, call the paramedics. I think my son's having a stroke. And my speech was going out. They couldn't understand me. I just kept babbling. I didn't understand them. The paramedics showed up, took me to one hospital in San Luis Obispo, a little tiny hospital, which had not set up for stroke center at all. They took me there first. The ER doc there couldn't even evaluate me, couldn't get me what I needed. He called down to Santa Barbara, where College Hospital, there happened to be a neurosurgeon in the emergency room, called luck at time, or the luck I had. He was there on Black Friday because most of the doctors were gone. It was a holiday weekend. I mean, had I stroked in Los Angeles, my dad, who was a retired doctor, he would have said I would have died because nobody was even here. They medevaced me from San Luis Obispo to Santa Barbara, where he went in on me very quickly with looking at me, analyzed me, he ran some tests, looked at my carotid artery, and he said to Stephanie at the time, he goes, I haven't seen this badly damaged of a carotid artery except for a gunshot or a knife wound. It was so badly dissected, meaning the carotid artery is allowing blood and oxygen going up to the brain. So my CPU of my body, my nervous system was getting shot, and I kept going in a out of consciousness. So he had to fish a catheter into my body and put a stent in there to stop the clots from going to my brain. He did that first. That didn't work. So it stopped that part, but my brain was so badly swollen, and I was just so inflamed, barely holding on, that I kept going in and out. He didn't know if I was going to come out of it, but he kept working diligently on me. And then they tried to freeze me to reduce the swelling in my brain. That didn't work either. So then after about 3 days of me fighting for my life, he said to my dad and my family, he says, I got to induce your son into a coma. So then I went into a coma for 10 straight days. And then in my coma, that didn't work either. So they had to perform what's called a craniectomy, which means they had to remove a piece of the skull off my head to allow the swelling to decrease. And they stored the piece of skull in my abdomen. So when I woke back up from my coma, 3 days after that, they put the skull back on my head. and they didn't know if I was going to walk, talk, or do anything. They thought I was going to be a vegetable.
Do you remember the moment you came out of it?
Yes, I do. I lucky enough where the doctor did what he had to do. He maneuvered so my speech and my cognitive side was still working. I don't know if this was him, but something external, some light, some being, I call it God, I call it a stroke of luck. Something abnormally took over and allowed me to be here talking to you right now, because I should have died a handful of times on the way to the hospital or on the way into surgery. And when I woke up from my coma, my dad was next to me and I could barely speak. I was trying to get my words were coming back slowly. I had lost probably about 40 pounds of muscle in my coma over the 10 days, literally, because I was just on IVs and fluids. I woke up with 2 feeding tubes in me, a PICC line going from my arm into my heart. And I take it, let me explain, Park. Even though my dad's a doctor, I was very anti-meds, I felt like I can beat anything. I was immortal. I was hanging out with the Navy SEALs. I was in fight condition. I was running 2 big companies. My body was so perfect and lean and down, and I had everything nailed down to a science that I figured there's no way nothing's going to ever happen to me. So when I woke up from my coma, I was on so many drugs, pain killers and anti-anxiety meds, that when I started to come through, I looked over at my dad and I said, "What's the matter?" He said to me, "You're paralyzed. You're paraplegic." I'm like, "What does that even mean?" He goes, "You can't move the left side of your body." And I said, "Why is there a helmet on my head?" He goes, because your brain's exposed because your skull's sitting in your abdomen." And I'm like, this doesn't sound right at all. I'm like, and I just started to get really upset and not understand why they did what they did to my body. So I was trying to get acclimated with all of it and not making sense of anything. However, Park, the good sign was I came back through cognitively and being able to talk somewhat. My aphasia, my stuttering was so bad then. I still stutter now and still have aphasia now, but it was a lot worse. And I just knew, and the surgeon who operated on me said, "Hey, you know what? This kid, he called me kid at the time, 39. He said, I'm going to get you back." And I said to him, "You just show me the door and I'll walk through it with you." And sure enough, he did. So he started me on therapies in the ICU, from speech therapy to occupational therapy to PT, because they didn't know. My father, who's a doctor, and my mom thought I was going to be a vegetable.
Well, isn't that what the doctors were telling you too, that you weren't going to talk again, walk again?
Yeah, well, the surgeon up north in Santa Barbara was really positive. Dr. Zahner was great. But when they transferred me after being in the ICU in Santa Barbara, they transferred me back down to San Diego. The first neuropsychiatrist who got a hold of me in San Diego, she told me, "Oh, your brain is dead and you may never walk. You're not going to walk for a while. You're not going to drive a car, and don't think about going back to work." And when she said that to me, I was like, "Don't ever tell me I can't do anything." And I fired her. I couldn't even speak, but I knew I had to fire her and get her out of my room. And we got into it, and as best as I could. And they brought in a whole new team of people. And I said, "No one is allowed to tell me I can't do anything. Tell me positive thoughts, reinforce me with a new mindset." And sure enough, Park, I learned to do that.
What was the mantra that you used to help you get through this?
Sure. So my mantra is, I can, I shall, I will. And now my mantra's even changed. I can, I shall, I did it. Because I wasn't going to give up and stop at all.
And then you started strokehacker.com. How long did it take you, number one, for recovery before you started Stroke Hacker?
It was quite some time. I mean, I spent the better half of 2 years after that in and out of the hospitals, from outpatient rehabs, home health facilities, community re-entries. I had really learned a lot about the brain and the way my brain was working. And I learned all about, I call it neurohacking, because the doctors are great. The surgeons saved my life, but they cut and run. Now it's up to me to figure out what I needed to do next. And I had the spirit as if I was going to learn to walk. I learned to walk in San Diego after I fired this first girl. I walked out of there, I think within 8 to 10 weeks afterwards. I didn't walk great. I walked with assistance, but they never thought, she never thought I was going to get back on my feet at all. And in that time of being impatient, of learning how to everything, learning how to use the bathroom facilities myself, learning how to eat, learning how to brush my teeth, learning how to shave, things that we take for granted every day, Park. Things about just getting on and off the bed, sitting up and standing up. My vertigo was so bad that, the risk of falling is so great with people with brain injuries and strokes that it's just not, I tell people now, a stroke's one thing. The brain injury is the recovery part of what we need to focus on, because the brain injury is what happens with a stroke. And that can cause, to be paralyzed. That can cause memory loss. That can cause speech aphasia, all kinds of things. And then you have to learn how to, okay, wait a second. If my left hand is not working, how am I going to make my right arm do everything now? And imagine, I tell people having a stroke is like cutting yourself in half, and the whole one side of your body is completely gone. Sensation and feeling and everything. So you're now walking around, you're now in a full body, but my whole left side of my body was turned off. I had no movement back then.
What did you learn about the brain and neuroscience that surprised you? Or what was that one thing that really helped you rework your brain to help get your body going?
You know what? That's a great question, Park. But now I'll look back at it. I did not get enough rest and give myself enough time to heal. I went right at it too fast and too hard, where there's a sense of balance, there's a sense of breath, there's a sense of the journey for me is not about the destination of walking again or driving again, which I do it all now, or completing a 5K or 10K or throwing out the first pitch for the A's or the Angels like I've done before. It's about the journey of getting there. And what I learned, you can only do so much with a brain injury. It takes time, it takes months and years and hours to heal. It's repetition. It's motions as a child. As when you come out of the womb, we learn to speak. We learn to put our fingers to our mouth. We learn to take off our steps. We learn to fall. All that had gone away from me. So at the age of 39, I had the body of a 3-year-old kid and a brain of a 4-year-old.
And so when you were studying the neurology of that, was there something about the brain, again, that surprised you, that like, oh, if I focus on this, it'll help start bringing my body back?
What's interesting, Park? I was so much in fight or flight. I was looking to stay alive and looking to move. I kept saying to myself, if I keep moving, I'm going to keep improving. And that's what I think I did. But along the way, what you realize I had to do was I had to rest and take those moments and pause. Because even though you keep going, the brain can only gather so much information all at once. And rebooting the brain is like rebooting the body. It's like your CPU of your computer just shutting off and getting nicked. It takes a while for it to reprogram.
Well, it's the stories you tell yourself, I guess, too, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
So your doctors are telling you one thing and you're like, no, I've got this mantra, I can, I shall, I will.
Absolutely. And then, at the same time, I didn't want to believe in any of it. I wanted, I was training with my SEALs. I was training with Dan Henderson. I was training with him. I was hanging out with Shaquille O'Neal, going one-on-one with him in Florida on his court. Why? Because I wanted to go one-on-one with Shaq. Why not? I was like one of these things, like I would do anything that was crazy, absurd, and then I can make a statement. But however, Park, before my stroke, I was not the same person who I am now. Now, after my stroke, I found kindness and compassion and a sense of understanding and a sense just to slow down, and it's okay to be me. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to work out the way we think it's going to work out. And now it's all about what can I do to give back? Because now my biggest mission is leaving these memories behind and being of service to people. Because the amount of suicide rate amongst brain injuries, veterans especially, and people with stroke is so high. I mean, I think now, Park, suicide rate for veterans are over 100 a day at the moment. And that's just unacceptable. And that's what I really have climbed into and really learned about the brain It's not about connecting the brain to my left side of my body. It's about letting my brain know that I'm going to be okay, and reinforcing with positive attitude and positive mantras, as well as what you put in your microbiome is what the same thing. Thy food is thy medicine. So I've learned to really create my own way of neurohacking or becoming the stroke hacker, because I have 10 years experience at this. Where my neurologists are great. They went to school for 10, 12 years to learn all about the brain and the way the body works, and that's excellent. But they'll never know what it's like to have a stroke unless they have one after, they're an MD. And that's what I do. I work with neurologists. I work with therapists. I'm the one who can show people the hope and get the people inspired, because I am the proof of what's happening. And that's my biggest goal right now, is just to show people what's possible.
Can you tell us about Stroke Hacker, the website strokehacker.com, and what is the process? How do people find you? And when they do find you, how do you help them?
It varies. I'm in the process right now of launching my curriculum, my books, my master course, which will be coming out in the next couple of months here. But really, it is, I can look at somebody and know where they're at within minutes, depending on their age, where the stroke happened in their brain, if it was ischemic, if it was hemorrhagic, what parts are missing. And I can help them to dial in and reconnect and find out what they want, because everybody has to have a why. My inspiration were my two daughters. I wanted to walk for them. People have to dig down deep inside when this happens and go, what is my why? Why do I want to keep living? Why do I want to keep fighting? And what is it that I want to do? So a lot of what I do is I get into them. I set up a goal or structure with people. If they hire me one-on-one, or if I work with goals with teams of people. But, it can go, there's so many different ways to look at a stroke or a brain injury, and I can talk to people about all of it because I just have the experience with it. I live it every day for the last 10 years.
Does it go beyond just positive thinking? Is it nutrition? Is it exercise? What else do you cover in this?
Absolutely. It is severe depression, because imagine this. Imagine, Park, it really, most people who have a stroke, their loved one, what happens is it's not just the stroke survivor, it's the loved one and the family members of that person who survived that stroke. So what I do is I dial into families. I want to make sure that the husband, the wife, the parents, the sister, the kids are all dialed in with me, because what I essentially do, I become like the head coach, and I make them all my assistants, because the whole goal is to get that stroke survivor back to being independent. Because I know it tore apart my marriage with my ex-wife. It tears apart so many people, so many families. Depression can lead into not just the stroke survivor, but imagine being all of a sudden waking up one day and going, I have to be a caregiver now. And not many people know what a caregiver is, or a care partner. Once you're in the hospital, you push a button, a nurse will come, an orderly will come, your food will come, your therapist will come. You go back home, you don't push a button. You're now relying on your loved one who's ever at home with you. So what I help people do is I help people go into their houses. I help them set up certain things in their kitchen, because I'm still one-handed a lot of times. So I have hacking devices I've created, or I've built, or I've bought in my kitchen. So everything to me is like, even me sitting here in my podcast station, I'm all with one hand. So I have to set everything up so I know where things are and things that I can do and see. And still, honestly, my left eye is still partially, I won't say it's blind, but I have a field deprivation even in my left eye. So if I see a reading or the screen, I may not pick up all of it. So I have to slowly align myself with my body to look at a screen to make sure my right eye and my left eye are together. It gets complicated, but it's very simple because normal people don't think about it. I've been forced to be in it every day, every minute for 10 years.
So coming back around to the work you've done a little bit with our son, Parker, you guys met on Metal, and he, through his work with Oculus and his cosmic looking glass, 3D virtual reality meditation mindfulness thing, got the idea that maybe he could help you regain movement in your left arm to begin with, right? Can you take us quickly through that process of what went down?
So mirroring is what happens. So what happens is the brain will often forget about the side of the body that is weak. And most of the time, what the practitioners and the doctors will tell you is that you have 18 months to get it back. That is such complete bullshit. I'm 10 years out and I'm getting more movement now, 10 years after my stroke than I did even in the first initial time. So what Parker has built, he's reconstructed my body in VR where I'm actually can lift my left arm, open my hand, close my hand. So my brain is seeing it and understanding it. So it's sending a signal to my brain that the left hand is there. So I've been using it for a couple of months now, and I'm already getting more movement in my arm now than I have in 10 years.
And this technique is not new in that it's mirroring, as I understand it. I've got a brother who's a physical therapist, and we've got a neighbor who's a physical therapist whose husband has gone through a stroke and also as well. And they said that this mirroring thing happens where you literally put up a mirror and move one side of your body, your hand, and try to trick your brain into making it think it's the other side and to get it going. So as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, basically what you all have done is taken this and put it into a 3D Oculus environment. So your body is really, I don't know, quote unquote, being tricked into it or reconnecting synapses that are making that move.
Neuroplasticity, Park, is what it's called. Yeah, he's reconnecting because part of my brain is damaged or considered by some doctors to be dead. I don't believe anything's dead. I just think it's dormant. So what Parker has done is allowed the rest of my brain, the other 90% of that's still active, to do more of the work and reconnect my left side with my brain, and that's what it's doing. But again, I had to go through so much in my life through my own mindful, my own emotions and my own depression and my own potential suicide that I looked into years ago to get to this place, because had Parker introduced this to me or early on, I would not have accepted it because I wanted everything right now, right then. And this allows me, what he created allows me to feel it now, to breathe through it, and to take it in so it settles, and it's become a constant with me now.
How long did it take for you to first try on using the Oculus approach, the 3D approach to this, to the first moment you actually had movement in that arm? Can you take us to that?
I can't tell you if this was all of it, but it happened pretty damn quick considering I've been doing this for 10 years and I haven't seen much movement at all. But I'd done a series of events before I met Parker that allowed me to let go of some of my PTS and my depression and my thinking that, I'm not my stroke. So I had to let go of so many things and realize that I'm whole and complete just the way I am. So I was ready for Parker to come into my life. I think it's all circumstantial and timing's everything. That when he came in, I was accepting it and I was loving it instead of fighting it. And I think that's parallel with anyone in their lives. If you're ready for something, it's going to come to you. The laws of attraction were definitely on my side.
And then you started doing the program. And how long did it take for you to be wearing that headset and going through his program before you realized that you were getting some movement in your left arm?
Well, okay, it took me a while to get acclimated into the Oculus. It probably took hours and hours. Where in the very beginning, I put it on and I would conk out. I get tired, neurotired within minutes. But now I can keep it on for at least a half hour to an hour now, which is plenty of time to go through a couple of his training modules and get enough going. But also, it's like anything else. If you overwork it and you do too much, the brain can't handle it.
And when was the first time you saw movement?
In the last month and a half.
And what happened?
So I put on the goggles, and there's an exercise where he says, raise your arm and open your fingers and extend your fingers and open your arm and raise your arm. And there's a whole sequence. So what I found is when I took off my goggles, my left arm was on top of my head. I didn't know how it even got there. It's one of these things where it's like, I looked and I recorded it. I sent it to Park, and he goes, "Holy shit, this is working." I said, "You're onto something here, big buddy. We got to figure out how to make this work and how do we get this into the hands of millions of people right now who are suffering from disability of a brain injury and stroke."
Well, and to help so many people do it, and it really sounds like it begins with that open mind of having your head in the right space to begin with, that you think and believe that this is going to be helpful, and then you go through the process, and it sounds like it can be painstaking and time-consuming, but you just got to believe, don't you?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Wow. So what's next for you?
I'm never going to stop. I want to go. I want to commit that this is my life work. I have an entrepreneur background, so that's all coming back to me now. But I'm now ready. I'm now ready for the first time in my life to take this on, and I want to grow my community to a million people in the next 3 years. By 2025, I want to have a million people following me, and I want to make a difference with them because I've helped people regain their independence. I've helped people drive again. I've helped people walk again. Now I want to really expose these people's successes to the rest of the world, the men and women who need us, because I believe I'm onto something. And it may just, listen, I work with Therabody, with Theragun, with Dr. Jason as well, and his program, his company is amazing. I also work with Mark Squibb, who's the CEO of Libo2, which is the oxygen. So I think what I have here is my stroke hacker. I built my whole wellness facility in my home, and Parker's product, the VR, the Oculus, is going to be a part of this ritual as well now. It's going to be part of the formula, because if you combine it all together, it's a perfect fit.
Well, that's a pretty powerful why, Shawn, and to have 1 million followers by 2025 and help as many people as you possibly can to regain. Sir. And whether you've had a stroke or not, or you're helping someone who has had a stroke, it sounds like your program and your way of thinking and your power of story is really good for everybody.
I tell everybody, impossible only means I am possible. Don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with a challenge, and we'll find a solution together. Because if you're always in solution for anything, you're going to get there. We put these things in our mind, which makes us paralyzed as well. And my paralysis is an inconvenience, but the real struggle lies from the neck above, in the brain, in my mind, of what I think of myself as.
Wow.
And for so many years, I thought of myself as not being, of ability, of disability, and that's not who I am. No matter how I show, it's not who I am. It's not how I'm going to show. So many people have a stroke and a brain injury, and they categorize themselves as this is how they have to be, and they succumb to the rest of it. And who wants to live on opioids and anti-anxiety pills and be dependent on others? That's not my way of living, and that should not be a factor for anybody. And my goal is to help them to get off what they need, show them alternate viabilities and solutions, whether it's your son's ocular or VR, or whether it's Therabody or oxygen, or just the right nutrition for the body. I can help people get back something. I can't guarantee a full comeback, but I can get them back on that journey.
So we can go to strokehacker.com to learn more about you and your programs and what you can do. Where else can people find you, Shawn?
Oh, the socials, Instagram, Facebook, my LinkedIn, anywhere. Just type in Stroke Hacker, type in Shawn Entin, and you'll find me. I've been out there. Happen to have been on, they aired a segment that I did with Cheryl Hunter that aired on CNN. I've been on ABC News here in Los Angeles. I threw out the first pitch for the A's and the Angels for an organization called Strikeout Stroke. If there's something happening with the brain or a stroke, I'm there. I want to be there, and I want to make a difference, because I can teach people how to get through what they're getting through and to overcome their challenges.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing your story, Shawn. Really, really important story to share with the world.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks, Park.
And thank you all for listening to this edition. Man, share this episode with anybody that's going through any sort of debilitating time in their life. And if, by all means, if you know of someone who's had a stroke, or if you're dealing with that in your life, visit Shawn over at strokehacker.com.
Thank you. I was going to say this to end. Everyone's got their own story. Everyone's got their own trauma, but the trauma can go to triumph if you believe in it. And you don't need to sit in your own trauma all by yourself, because that's the worst place to be. I've been there and I've done that. But if you find a group like I offer here with the community that we put together, you're not alone. And most people feel like they're alone from depression or from a brain injury, and you're not. Reach out to us and we can help you.
And with that, Shawn, I will close my show as I always close it, and that is, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. Shawn proves that out more than anybody. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.